Danny McMahon.
When you are.
Let's do this.
Oh, whoa, whoa, stop. Hey,
What happened?
I think another podcast started playing. How are you, Danny McMahon?
I'm good, Joe. What's up?
It was a different file. It went from one to another. And there we go. So we're back from,
Started hearing my voice. I'm like,
hey, that's
is that
you.
me? Is that what I sound like? Oh, no.
Like an acid flashback.
Yeah.
So we are back from hiatus.
We had a little break,
Yes.
and we're back.
Hiatus.
Hiatus.
That's what they call it in show business, Danny.
Do they?
Hiatus.
Hiatus.
We're back from hiatus.
It's such a fancy word.
It sounds better than break.
Does it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like, I don't know, like we're doing something very important.
Hiatus.
Hiatus. Yes. Yeah. We I guess we have taken a little bit of a break. Just kind of, well, for me, dealing with the start of the real start of the bike shop season, which for us it starts when the weather turns, and our weather has we've finally gotten some consistent weather here in the Chicagoland area, and then we had that the break-in to deal with. We had somebody breaking into the shop and stealing bicycles, and
There is a special place in hell for them.
yeah, the biggest problem there has been the customers' bikes that have to get replaced. So
That is the real tragedy.
Yeah,
You can't obviously replace them.
no, and luckily most people have been cool.
Mm-hmm.
But just finding bikes and just trying to keep them happy. That's been a little bit of a job, but that's gone pretty well. And yeah, I mean, we're recording in the shop, so you see what the state of the shop is right now. That's can't move.
It's packed,
Mm-hmm.
literally packed. There's very little floor space free, and you got to really be careful walking around.
Yes, I have
So it's all your service bikes that you're working on. It's new bikes built. Some bikes kind of in the middle, and then there's a bunch of new bikes and boxes. And
a few new bikes. Yeah, I mean, we've actually received some new product, which is, it's cool. There's certain things that we've had on order for a long time, and they're starting to trickle in. And so that, I guess it's nice to have some new bikes to sell. It's also kind of surprising, seeing the state of some of these brand new bikes.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I probably shouldn't call out any of the particular brands that I sell. But it's been, I've been kind of surprised how some of these bikes are built. The components that some of the bike companies are using these days are very suspect.
really
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Things that you would normally never see on a nicer bicycle. Brands that are maybe were thought of 2 years ago as a incredibly second tier brand is now front and center on some bike companies' gravel bikes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stuff I would never put on a bike. Stuff I
Okay.
would never. I mean, I guess over the last couple of years, I've had to sub parts out.
Mhm.
I've had to go to some of these second tier brands, just to keep people running.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that some of these bike companies are actually using these parts on bikes that they're putting out there and selling to the public at a real bike price
Right.
is pretty. I think the bikes are kind of compromised.
Now, are these the low end? Let's say you have a component group, whatever manufacturer. Are you talking about like the low? They're using even lower.
It's not
group sets,
it's
or
not
is it
Shimano
just-
or SRAM.
Okay.
So put it that way. It's not like what I would consider a name brand.
Okay.
It's a brand called Microshift, which is they make some okay things. I'm not saying that they're a horrible brand, but they were never it was never commonplace to see that brand
I see.
on a $1,300 bike, Danny. $1,300 bike retail. You would never, that was in for gravel bikes. it's where you would expect to see maybe at the very least something like a Sora, which is kind of a lower end group or something like that. Something recognizable and certainly something from Shimano, let's say. But now you're not even getting that. And I gotta. It's a bike that I definitely won't sell again.
Huh.
It's not something that if that is what the world of $1,300 road bikes looks like, I am out.
That's wild, because I would expect to have, for 1,300, I mean, I would expect to have Rival 105.
105. That used to be a 105 equipped bike.
Yeah.
Sora was in the $1,000 price range, $900,000. You would see Claris, but it would be something from Shimano. It would be something with metal involved as opposed to a lot of plastic and cheapy. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Really just not very good quality parts.
Now, is this because of the great parts supply shortage, or because of pandemic related, or is this?
Yeah, I'm sure that the bike. I know that Shimano has problems supplying some of the manufacturers. So that I'm sure the manufacturers are in desperate need of just building these bikes.
Yeah.
So they're sourcing parts, but doesn't seem like it's reflected in the retail price of that bike. And it looks like somebody's making money on these bikes and subbing out some really inexpensive parts. I mean, I get that the whole supply chain, I get that, shipping costs more and all those expenses are being passed down to the consumer in one way or the other. But boy, if I was a bike brand who prided myself on putting a bike shop quality bike out there, and then I'm building it with this kind of crap because it's really, I mean, I think that these parts are okay for something you would buy at maybe a department store, or, in the case of the last 2 years, we just trying to keep people on the road, so out of desperation, you've had to use some of these different brands, or maybe like a really inexpensive bike.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it, on a $400 or $500 bike.
Right.
But not on a $1,300 bike that you call a gravel bike that you are telling people that you can go and ride. I don't know, go take the adventure of a lifetime on. This bike is suspect.
Right.
The wheels are off-brand, some sort of brand I've never heard of, and but the components, it really kind of surprised us when we pulled them out of the box.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if I had looked at the spec sheet somewhere on the manufacturer's website, I would have seen that they were speccing the bike that way. But these days, you're just so tied up with other things, and almost surprisingly, surprised to get bikes these days.
I was gonna say, and to be fair, like you're not, you're so used to getting. Sounds like you were saying you're used to getting a certain minimum.
Yeah, I mean,
group set parts on a bike that costs a certain amount. So
when you're
not like you're going to sit there and look at every spec. Yeah, you're kind of expecting, like, if I'm going to go into a bike shop and buy like a decent road bike, it's going to have Rival or 105.
Yeah, it's going to have some, or a name brand part on it.
Yeah,
like I said, going back to that, it's a name brand being SRAM or Shimano.
Yeah,
it's going to have one of the two big companies on there.
And for you Campy fans, Campagnolo as well. But I don't see a lot of Campy these days.
They're not very well represented in the United States anymore. I think there's a handful of shops that still do a fair amount of them. I actually have a brand, 3T, that does some bike builds with where they do use some Campy parts. So they do a stock Campy bike. But I think of all the brands that I do, they're the only ones that kind of offer that. And they are a higher end brand, I guess.
I can't think of the bike or where I saw it. It was in a bike shop not too long ago, but I had this same experience where I was looking at some bikes and I was like really surprised to see a lower end group set on the bike.
Yeah.
And like I would like to think it's probably decent, but I mean, I was kind of like, oh, I've never even heard of that. Like, I know the manufacturer, but I hadn't heard of that like lower level group set. It wasn't Shimano. It was SRAM, but I can't even. Wait, was it SRAM? Now I'm just forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, yeah, it was a little bit jarring.
Yeah.
To see that. I was kind of like, huh,
Yeah.
what's that about? And and I don't keep up with all bike stuff, so I don't know the lower end stuff,
Yeah.
which sounds snobby. I don't mean it that way,
No.
but like sometimes I see these and I'm like, oh, I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. I'm.
But
I think that there's no turning back. I think this is just going to be something. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe things will get completely caught up, and there will be a glut of things, and eventually we'll kind of get back to bikes having Shimano or SRAM on them, and this is just a bump in the road. But the way the big companies work, and once they're able to get that kind of money for a bike that's got that equipment on there, let's make an extra buck on that bike.
Yeah. It's funny. I had heard of Microshift, but only like the name. And I was just looking at the website when you were chatting there.
And some of their stuff, to be fair, some of their stuff is good. I've used some of their things.
Sure.
I mean, it's not all, it's not, I wouldn't say it's horrible stuff.
Right.
Their stuff, but primarily I use it on repairs of more inexpensive bikes, to sub things out when I can't get Shimano parts. Yeah. And they've been slowly, they've gradually been taking up more space in the catalog.
Interesting.
As far as like the parts catalog, and we've probably leaned on them more over the last few years than ever before. Yeah. But to see a full Microshift Grupo on a bike is kind of
and to be fair, you're just saying you didn't expect that brand on that bike at that price.
Yeah, because we're talking about a kind of a brand that you associate with.
Yeah.
A certain
well,
level.
after we end this podcast, I want to know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a box right there, so you could there's a tip.
And for folks who don't know, so we're talking about group sets, the components on the bike, all the gears. Mm-hmm. And so SRAM has 3 main ones. So at the top level, you have red, which is like very light. It's for the racers, whatever, people who can afford it. And then Force is like the mid-level. And then Rival is like the entry. And then I don't even know what's below that. They have other group sets or no?
On the road side, honestly, I don't go any lower than that with SRAM Road. On the Shimano side, they do have another 2 or 3 tiers below their 105 stuff. So.
And Ellie mentioned that, and then Shimano has Dura-Ace at the top, and then Ultegra in the middle, and then 105 to start. And I'm only mentioning those for folks who maybe aren't familiar with that. But I saw a tweet today from Cycling Tips, I think, and they had an article about Daniel Oss's bike. So he rode with Peter Sagan yesterday in the Unbound gravel race. And the little caption or the tweet copy they put with the article said, if Force is good enough for Daniel Oss, it's good enough for you. And I retweeted it and I said, I think Rival's pretty much good for everyone. Almost everyone. Yeah. And I was kind of half joking, but it is kind of nuts. I think, roadies especially are a little bit guilty of it. I know I was, where it's like, you just get so obsessed with everything about, related to your performance, like your diet, your gear, your bike, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, I have to have red, I have to have Dura-Ace.
Yeah.
And, the reality is, come on. I mean, Rival is like a perfectly good, 105 is like a perfectly good group set. And, sure, it's a tad heavier, but we're talking like a half a water bottle or something?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah. It's just, now that I've been away from the racing scene, doing it myself, that is, like, I kind of look back at some of that. I'm like, oh, God, like, kind of embarrassed. Like, I was so, like, obsessed with certain things and always having, the lightest, fastest. And it's just so expensive.
Yeah, the price difference with Shimano, let's say from Ultegra to Dura-Ace, is substantial.
Yeah,
it's a good. There's a good difference there, and really, performance-wise, there's not a lot of performance difference. What's the difference between one and the other is really materials that they're using to build the parts, because there's no expense spared with the Dura-Ace. They'll use titanium and some carbon. I don't know. I shouldn't say carbon fiber because I'm not sure if they're using carbon. I guess maybe in the levers, but they do everything possible to lower weight.
Yeah,
it's not really a performance thing. It's really just lowering the weight on some of those things.
Which is generally performance too, though.
Yeah. I mean,
but you mean the actual functionality?
The actual functionality, like how it feels when you're shifting. Right. The performance as far as like the shifting quality.
And Brett, obviously, SRAM has its own kind of shifting. What do they call it? Like, they have a word for it. It's just the technology, but right to go harder, left pad to go easier.
Yeah, they have their own.
So that's a little different. And don't get me wrong, I love Dura-Ace. Like, I think it's my maybe all-time favorite group set. And maybe on my next bike I'll get it, but maybe not. It's super sweet, but it is just kind of funny when. I mean, even if you're racing, like, I don't know, it's a Cat 3, like a middling Cat 3 or something. I mean, if you can afford it, go for it. But, like, I've seen guys kick ass on Rival and 105.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they actually go really, really fast. My first experience with that was when I first started racing, I quickly got a job at a bicycle shop. So I was introduced.
Smart.
Yeah, that's the only way I could afford to do it. So. So pretty quickly I had a bike, the first bike I bought already had Ultegra on it, Ultegra 600. And my next bike was a Dura-Ace bike. It was a Dura-Ace equipped bike because you just, especially working at the shop I was working at, you don't ride anything lower than Dura-Ace if you were working at the shop, you know? I mean, there was nowhere else to go.
It had so much cachet. It was such a like, what do you drive? 911?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you ride? Dura-Ace?
Yeah. It's Dura-Ace,
it's the cream of the crop.
Yeah. I mean, it was the best stuff, and you worked at a shop and you got stuff at cost and, so you built the nicest bike. But then pretty soon after that, I went over to Europe, and then, I took my bike shop built bike, and I show up there, and my bike at the time was pretty much in line with any of the Pro Tour bikes. Only the guys at the Pro Tour were riding.
Oh, right.
You're riding an Eddie Merckx.
Yep.
I had an Eddie, I had a DeRosa. The first time I went over, I had a DeRosa. So I had a DeRosa. Ariostea had was riding DeRosas at the time, and full Dura-Ace. Mavic wheels, all the full thing, hand-built Mavic wheels. I mean,
you were just like out of a magazine.
I was. The bike was. I wasn't, but the bike certainly was. It was all top notch.
Yeah.
And when I looked around at the guys that I was racing against, they were lucky to be riding 105.
Right.
They were riding team bikes and bikes that were given to them, and you had people riding 105. And, nobody was riding Dura-Ace. The only guy who had a bike that was close to as nice as my bike. Well, some of the masters did, so some of the older guys did have nice bikes. But as far as guys my age, there was one guy who raced with Benesto that had a full campy record bike, but it was a team bike.
Yeah, and
he was the only one that had anything that was near what I had, and that was kind of eye opening. And then to take it even further, I got there. It was 1990. The wall had just come down, and we had Eastern Europeans coming in to Spain. There was a couple of Russians, an Estonian, all Russians, I guess, former Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And they were still riding Colnagos.
Nice.
Like really beat up steel red Colnagos, with their tubulars were all, the threads were coming off on the tubulars. The bikes were really, really bad shape, and they were so fast.
I was going to say Andre Schmiel types.
Oh, yeah. Incredibly fast. I'm going
to go 30 miles an hour for hours, try to hold my wheel.
Yeah, they were nuts, man.
Yeah.
They were nuts. They were incredibly fast, and, you just saw the stuff that they were riding, their wheels with hops in them and stuff, and just really bad.
That's just reminded me of this totally random thing. Of course. I did. So you know what Bike Snob is? Evan Weiss.
Yeah.
So he had this ride when I was living in New York City. He started this ride. I forgot what he called it. Of course, he gave it a funny name. But anyway, he just started it, and I think he's still doing it. And it was just a very low key annual ride, and I mean low key to the max. So it'd be like, let's meet at this street corner, show up on your bike, and we're just gonna ride. I got like this fun path. I got this fun route, and it wasn't like a hardcore ride at all. It was just. I mean, people were showing up on mountain bikes. There was a guy smoking a joint. There was a dude on like, I don't know, what would you call it? Just like I don't know, just like a little city bike. You know, kind of like those Dutch bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was something like that. My point though is, it was just a fun ride. So we weren't like riding. And, we were going up this, there was one climb we did, and it wasn't a very long climb. And everyone kind of went hard a bit just for fun. And the guy who won the climb was this dude in sneakers on that city bike.
Really?
And it was just funny because like I was trying, I was going hard.
Really?
Yeah. And he dropped us all.
Wow.
And I was just like, that dude was just pedaling, chatting away with people, and then he's just like, boom. And I was like, "Do you race?" You know, after we went to a brewery, and I'm like, "Do you race?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Maybe you should." not that I'm not trying to give myself like kudos. Like he beat me, so he must be great. Like he dropped all of us. It was pretty funny.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just the bike, right?
Yeah.
It's the ride. Before we go on, Joe, though,
Yes.
I need to nerd out.
Mm-hmm.
So hiatus, because I like etymology and word history. Hiatus comes from the Latin hiare, which means to yawn.
Really?
Hiatus.
Interesting.
Yep. I just thought that was a fun one.
Is that a word that you had heard before? It's common to me.
Hiatus?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
You mean just like the general use of it?
Well, the show business use of this.
I hadn't.
Of it.
I can't say I did. I mean, no.
Gotcha. No, yeah. I mean, I've got some friends in that side of the business, and it's
a little more like euphemistic, like as opposed to like.
Yeah, it's a term that they just use. That's their kind of like when you your favorite
like your show's on hiatus.
Your favorite show, your show's on hiatus. It's on break. They don't say we're on break. They are on hiatus. Your favorite radio show. Your
definitely sounds a little euphemistic. Like, yeah, doesn't sound as bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I always found it to
little hiatus. So we had our hiatus, and we're back at the shop, and
easing back into it.
I've been riding. Have you been riding?
I have probably ridden more indoors than I have outdoors recently, just because we're busy here, so that I can kind of schedule, I can pencil it in. And as you know, an outside ride is a little bit more of an operation.
Yep.
And so it's been, that's the thing with bike shops is that we're the busiest when it's the nicest time to ride outside. And so every year I'm reminded of that. I'm being reminded of that now.
Great paradox.
Yeah. And, but we'll get out. This is kind of the first wave. And once we kind of settle in and everybody gets back up to speed again, we tend to find our after work rides or our morning rides again,
I think that would be fun. I'd like to join you on one. I'll come down. I got a new bike.
I've seen.
Have you seen it all over my?
I've seen you all over your Instagram and Twitter.
Yes.
Looks like fun. I know the brand. I'm familiar with the brand. It's a State. Is that right?
State Bicycle Company. It's it was fun. So I had my road bike in the shop for just a little hiatus, and it just kind of, it was like the impetus to go and get another bike. But I kind of wanted another bike, but I wanted like a different bike from like my road bike. So I got this single speed, and it's got flat bars, and so no drop bars. So looks like, your kind of classic city fixie. But I don't like fix, so I just, I have the option to switch the hub around, but I don't like fix. I like the single speed. So I got the handbrakes.
You're a grown man, Danny. You shouldn't be riding fixed.
I never, I didn't even like them when I was a lot younger.
No,
they were huge in New York City when I moved there. I saw them explode.
And so did the rider's knees.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And I saw someone yesterday on a fixie, and I just was behind them for a hot second, and like when they came to the stop sign, like had to do the whole like
trek stand.
Yeah, like the skid, because there was a car coming, and I think they wanted to roll through it. It just looks, I don't know. If it's your thing, cool, but for me, no way.
Yeah, having worked in bike shops at the height of all of that, just watching the evolution of that, and kids get on it and kids get off of it, forced off of it, really. It never made a lot of sense to me. Whenever selling a bike, I would always sell it, free wheel front brake.
Yeah.
I certainly try to encourage people to do it that way.
Yeah.
But it was the thing, it was the in thing. A lot of young kids, doing it. And we had a lot of early adopters to the skidding and fixed thing at the shop. We were always kind of the hub for all of that, and the kids working there were always the cool kids on the block.
Is this a pandemic? You were the hub for this?
Yes.
Sorry.
And I also saw the problems with it firsthand. All these kids, young kids, developing tendonitis in their knees.
Yeah,
I mean, really bad.
Yeah,
to the point where they couldn't even stand up. They had to call in like off from work because their knees hurt so bad. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting to see them kind of fall into that.
Yeah,
and also just the accidents, and they would fly over, taxi cab
hoods
and stuff.
And for folks who don't know, I'm sorry, I have to do this. Fixed gear is like what you see in the Olympics, the track bikes. So there's no freewheel. You don't like coast. And so the pedals are always moving forward with the momentum and the rear wheel. So you stop by basically backpedaling, but that means like using your body and your weight, right? To like slow the bike down.
Or actually not even backpedaling. Like you have to kind of lock up the wheel. Like,
I was going to say, it's kind of, it's a lockup. It's a skid.
It's slowing it down.
Yeah,
it's slowing it down.
Yeah.
If you lock it up, you skid.
Right.
So you're either skidding or you're like forcefully trying to pedal.
Yeah, that's
slowly.
what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's kind of hardcore.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I remember stories of when I first got into bike racing. It was like a legendary thing to do, to go ride the roads on a fixed gear. It was supposed to be good for training.
Yes.
That was like one of those early things that...
Old wives' tales.
Yeah, like, mid, late 80s, you would...
Italian school, like, you must ride the fixed gear.
Oh, it's great for spinning. It'll help your spin.
All these crazy old ideas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was like one of the things that you were supposed to go do. And I remember trying it for like around the block. I worked at a bike shop. I had access to cool stuff, so I could try a fixed gear in 1987 or 88. And I did it, and I said, "This is crazy. I'm going to kill myself. This is stupid."
What's the dumbest thing I ever did?
Oh yeah, I mean, and also I would toe clips and straps too, because that was the other thing. It was a track bike laying around the shop, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, I think I could do without this part.
I was actually tempted for a hot second to put the switch the hub around and use the fixed gear side, but I didn't even do that. I'm like, no.
Just to try it.
Just to try it.
Yeah,
but I'm like, I'm not even going to do that.
Yeah, don't.
So I got a cool new bike. It's real fun. It wasn't, very expensive. It's a steel bike. It's just
tooling
just
around.
real basic. And I love the simplicity of it. I hadn't ever owned a single speed, I don't think. Certainly not a fixie. And it's just you know what? It puts a smile on my face. It's just like a fun bike. It's got a cool paint job. It's the Miami Vice Windbreaker is the name they gave it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's got that Miami Vice look. No, but it's super fun. And it just likes to go. It's got kind of like fat tires on it.
Yep.
38 or 36 or
whatever
they are.
Hybrid-y.
Yeah. Although calling it hybrid makes me feel like it's not as cool.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that. That's common sense, especially in the city. I mean,
no, it's it's super cool. So it's just so fun, so simple. I love that. There's no gears. The only quote technology on it is like the handbrakes. It's and I'm just like going, and it's just, oh my God, super fun. And you're just pedaling along. Kind of reminded me a little bit of like having, the coaster brake on your like BMX bike.
Yeah.
Like that kind of vibe. So
it's nice to have something like that just forces you to ride normal. Just not kid up, not strap in, not clip in, not do anything. Just being
regular shoes.
Just have a bike, grab it, and go.
So fun, and I can go fast on it if I want. I did crank on it a little bit.
Yeah.
I have a little Strava KO1 by my house that I love. It just goes over the bridge. Is that Damon? There's a little bridge. And it's my PR on that is like 32 seconds. And I didn't hit my PR on that new bike, the single speed, but it wasn't super far off.
Yeah.
Which I was like surprised at. I'm like, wow, like it was definitely slower than my road racing bike, but I'm like, it wasn't like crazy far off.
Sure.
I thought it was going to be a lot harder. But no, it's a super fun bike. And like you said, you could just hop on it. Easy to lock up. I don't feel like, I'm probably not going to lock it up and leave it for very long, but I don't have that same anxiety. Like I would never lock up my nice bike, my road bike.
No.
So that's kind of nice too, though, is that you just like lock it up. And obviously I don't want my bike stolen, but if it did, I'm not going to like freak out too hard. I'll be like, oh, that was dumb or something, but super fun bike. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's funny. You're talking about locking up bikes. I have kind of what I used to think was a beater bike that I just ride around the city. I'd lock around, I'd lock up because I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
Kind of, 90s mountain bike, an old 90s specialized mountain bike. It's kind of a bike that I run errands with and kind of knocked around town with.
Beat it up.
Yeah, it was just it's something that I grab when there's some sort of city ride, a critical mass or the World Naked Bike Ride.
I was going to say the Naked Bike Ride. I was waiting for that.
That I believe is coming up soon. I got to look for that because it's my favorite bike ride of this.
I did a critical mass once in Chicago back in the day with this friend at the time. And there were naked people in the critical mass ride.
Just on a Friday.
Naked. Yeah.
Well, why not?
We actually took over, I want to say it was the Eisenhower. We went on the Eisenhower.
On the highway?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
It was incredibly stupid, but we did it. And they got all the traffic to slow down, but there were still people like going in the left lane doing like 80. And I'm just like, this is not, we only did it for like between two ramps, but that's a good distance on a bike.
That is on a bike. I'm surprised that cause the mass ride in the city is supported by the police, isn't it?
This was back in the day. This was
an old one.
Oh yeah, this would have been. Yeah. I can't even remember. It was a long time ago.
Early one.
Yeah. So this is, I think, when it was a little.
Okay. Yeah. It was
raw.
Yeah. No, it was definitely the early ones were raw.
Spicy meatballs.
Yeah, it was those were definitely like you could get hit.
So there's like
bike.
Guys and gals, buck naked, cruising on the Eisenhower.
Wow.
We're riding along.
Wow.
But anyway, I love my new bike. It's fun. It's nice to have a second bike too.
Mm-hmm.
Like when your bike goes in the shop, you can't ride for like 3, 4, or 5 days. Like,
yeah.
Kind of sucks.
What are they doing to your bike? What's wrong with your bike?
I had this issue with So it's funny we were talking about this earlier. I was going to mention it, but then I'm like, no, I won't mention it.
Danny, you're the cycling reporter. They don't drop everything you're doing to like fix your bike. They don't like rush to you and like, oh my God.
Well, you know what's fun now is like having that second bike. It's going to sound painfully obvious, but it's like, okay, I get to go ride this other bike now. It's just like fun.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it. But no, they're pretty busy, and I'm sure they couldn't give a rat's ass who I am in that sense. But basically, I had brought the bike in so they can cut the steerer tube off.
Oh,
remember that?
Yeah.
They took off. They lopped off the top bit. I rode it enough to know like where I want the position and everything. And I also have the alternative to flip the stem over because right now it's almost like a negative rise. But so I took it in for that. But one other thing that kind of came up, and it's something that I'm keeping an eye on. But so the new SRAM rival, relatively new, I think it came out like a year or two ago, in the past year or so, I think. It's really, really nice. We were talking about this earlier. So it's electronic, 12 speed, and, it's great. But I was riding and I'm like, why it sounds like it's a little bit loud, like just the whirring, the chain going through. But it was only loud in like certain gears. So basically about midway up the cog, the 12 speeds now, there's not a lot of room, right? They're so tight and the chain is so thin. So that SRAM chain is like, it's a very special kind of setup. And I thought it was just making a little bit of noise, like in the middle, which is usually where I'm at anyway. So in the big ring, and I don't know offhand what number, but in the big ring, and then somewhere in the middle for the back, and for like 3 or 4 gears, I was kind of like, it's just making a little bit of noise. So I did use the micro adjust. It didn't do much. So while I was in there anyway, I asked them to take a look at it. And they did make a couple tweaks. And I just washed the hell out of it just to make sure, because I wanted everything to be kind of equal. It's still making a little bit of noise. So I talked to this other mechanic at this other shop who knows SRAM like super well. And he's like, yeah, I've heard people talk about this who own the new rival. And he's like, you're not the first person to mention this. And so his thinking is what you could do is go with like a different cassette. So just one not as big. So a smaller cassette with a little bit less range. But, the reality is I don't need that much range anyway. So that's something he's thinking about. But he said he did make one adjustment. I had my bike in, and he's like, it was actually a little bit dirty. So I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to clean the hell out of it. And he told me this funny little anecdote. He's like, because he rides SRAM. And he's like a really fit guy. He races a couple of disciplines. So he knows what he's doing. And anyway, he's like, yeah, like when I start to, he's like, this system is so tight. He's like, when I start to hear noise, that tells me I need to clean my bike. Like that's how fine it is in the back with that space. So he's like, take it home, clean it up, let me know, go for some rides. And so it does sound a little bit better, but according to him, this is kind of a thing with that with that Grupo. So maybe I'll even have you take a look at it sometime.
Sure.
But
yeah,
the other gears are quieter.
Sometimes this stuff takes a while to bubble up. There are some things that are not always put out there openly by the companies.
Yeah.
They're just problems that kind of eventually you figure it out at the bike shop because you see so much of it come through.
Yeah.
It becomes a consistent thing.
Yeah.
And it can even get to the level where, it becomes such a problem that you start calling SRAM, to try to get some answers.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe at the beginning, and I shouldn't say SRAM because I guess it could be any company, but I'm,
Yeah.
And eventually they'll confess to you that it's a known issue.
Well, that's
You know.
it's so funny you said that because I do that. I have
Mhm.
called bike companies
Mhm.
and I'm like, hey, is this a known issue?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you have that with your computer, you call Apple,
Yeah.
and I've had that. I had that kind of issue with an iPhone, the iPhone 7, which was a little nightmare. But to your point, though, I will have to say, and it's funny because we're talking about SRAM and Shimano.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the two players, so it's kind of hard not to talk about them. But I will say though, because I like SRAM a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like the company. I like their people.
Yeah, we got
I like
friends working there.
Yeah,
You know,
I
like
have friends there.
old bosses. Yeah.
I do like their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is, when I have called them for tech support, it's been amazing. Like so good. Like the quality is insane. A human picks up the phone. It sounds like they're in the Chicago area.
They're in Indianapolis now.
Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And and they're usually very smart.
And a lot of them are former Chicago guys, former Chicago bike shop guys, because I know some of them. I know one of the girls that, somebody I used to work with at another shop. And when they bought Zip,
they're in India.
Yeah, they relocated, or they sent their support staff, the tech people down there, because they used to handle everything out of the Chicago, the Kingsbury office here in the city.
Yep.
And so everything was under one roof. But once they started buying these different places, they were able to kind of, send people around, and several Chicago people made the move.
Yeah.
So.
Have you been down to the new building? It's in the Google building downtown.
I have not. That I have.
Market. I was there a couple times interviewing Stan Day for an article I did on SRAM, and wow, it's a nice place. It's pretty cool.
Well, they were supposed to have an even cooler place because they were supposed to have the top floor of that building.
Oh, and they didn't get it?
Well, Google took it. And that's how it became the Google building.
Yeah, there's like a couple parts to that building. I don't know it super well, but I'm trying to remember. I just remember it would have been obviously a little cooler, but inside's fun. They have like the bike lane, like through the cubicles and stuff. And I went there for one of their kind of events, and then I was there for that interview. And it's a cool place. Obviously, that area is like cool if you're into that kind of.
Yeah, you know what? They've always been pretty generous with the local bike shops and hosting a night there. Obviously, with COVID the last couple of years, none of that stuff has happened, and I don't know that they were open that much before COVID hit. I mean, they had just kind of recently opened that place, or maybe a year or two before.
I'm not sure how long.
I forget how many years they've been.
I know they were
in
that other place for a long time.
Yeah, the other place was pretty well known to me, but the new place I haven't had a chance to go down there. But they would host like
they did a Swift thing. Zwift, sorry, Swift. I was thinking of the Swifter. They had a Zwift party. So they had who's the announcer? It's not Brad Soner. I know him, but it's the other guy. He has a really throaty voice.
Dave.
Dave something.
Yeah, I know who.
Yeah.
That guy.
He's always got the funny kind of sayings and stuff.
Yeah.
Like if there's a breakaway, he's like, he's got the money.
Yeah.
So went there for that. That was super fun. But yeah, so I don't know. I can't make any claims, but yeah, it was.
They've always been very good.
We'll see what happens. I know that I've been reassured. We'll find some sort of solution, but I think I'm just really picky. But I like a quiet bike.
Or it's a road bike. It should be quiet.
It should be quiet. I do keep my bikes very, very clean usually. And so, yeah, I just want a really clean bike, or a really quiet bike.
And I know it sounds kind of like a bike shoppy thing to say, to placate a noisy customer, but let it break in. Let it break in.
Yeah, I think
because it really could be something like.
I got almost 1,000 on it.
Something as simple as that it might, as you wear in the chain a little bit and you wear the cassette in a little bit, that they mesh a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because it could be just
for sure, yeah.
It could just be a small machining issue, or, where things are so tight where the chain and the cassette aren't meshing perfectly.
But I'm near 1,000 miles on it.
Just nothing yet. That's not enough really to start.
Break in a bike?
to break in like a drivetrain, like the like mileage on a chain and a cassette, because you can get thousands of miles on a chain and cassette.
I guess that makes sense, but I never had this issue with other bikes, brand new bikes, including SRAM bikes.
What I'm saying is that if this guy is right, that the tolerances are so tight, so that they are a little bit off, like something like a chain and cassette can actually wear in, kind of like a baseball glove.
Right.
You know how it feels stiff and hard at the beginning? And as you use it and kind of
oil it up,
it feels a little bit better. Like, I'm just, I'm spitballing.
Yeah. No, you make good points.
But that's something that it could actually, in theory, that it could wear in a little bit. That a chain and cassette can wear together. They usually do. They do wear together. So, in theory, they should line up a little bit better with a little wear.
Yeah. So I'll have a report on that down the road. But
is this our first test ride? Our extended test ride on the show?
Yes.
Nice. Danny, you wanted some structure. We are building in structure.
We got the structure.
We're getting some structure in.
So yeah, no. Otherwise, bike's great, loving it.
Awesome.
Can't complain. Having good rides.
Good.
I've gotten Sarah out. She has her e-bike
I've
now.
seen her whizzing.
She's whizzing along. She loves it.
Going very fast. You were in some sort of a foresty area. I saw
I think it looked faster in the video.
Well, I mean, it looked, whatever you're doing. If you sped it, whatever looks daring.
Yeah.
She looks.
She looks
like she's zooming.
Yeah, she's well. She knows that that's the what is it? The name of that trail? Just goes up north a bit, but we ride Elston over to that and pick it up, and is it the North Branch Trail?
Probably North Branch.
Yeah,
right? That's the common one.
She knows that a little bit better, every time, so she's a little more confident.
Yeah,
and I usually kind of lead, and there's just a couple little turns you have to be aware of. I've seen people go off the side of the road a little bit. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a fun family trail, so we don't go too crazy. But it's fun. It's nice to get out of the traffic a little bit.
Yeah,
for her especially, she doesn't love the traffic. I can't blame her.
Yeah, especially these days. We're kind of spoiled here where the shop is at, because we have a path across the street that just takes us for miles and it's easy.
I was going to ask you about that. Have you? I know I've ridden on parts of it before, but how long is it?
The paved portion is about 13 miles out, so 26 round trip.
Okay.
But after the 13 miles, it becomes a kind of pretty tame limestone.
Okay.
So I ride it with my road bike. If it's dry, no problem on a road bike. And that you could take another 65 miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, it goes all the way down to Starved Rock National.
No way. You can ride on a closed, traffic-free path all the way to Starved Rock?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I didn't know that. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I feel bad for not knowing that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ride here and fill up my bottles, and then I'm going to ride to Starved Rock.
Oh,
and then maybe I'll have Sarah pick me up.
That's a really, we're planning on doing a ride. We're trying to do get together a backpacking 101 trip, because there are so many people that have picked up gravel bikes and picked up all the bags and accessories and who don't do anything.
Is this gonna be like a shop ride?
Yeah, we'll put it out there. Yeah, some sort of organized event. But really just for people who want to dip their toes in the bike packing world.
So you're going to camp one night there?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Have you done much bike camping?
Never.
I haven't done any.
No, I'm, bike race and no, I've never carried a tent.
This is the ultra influence.
Yeah, I've never done any of that. Well, I'm not opposed to getting a hotel room down there and watching everybody else
credit card camping.
I don't pretend to be one of those guys. I'm open to it. I'm certainly open to it, and maybe with the right group and everything. But
there's a shop out of Chicago that does that. I'm trying to think.
Really?
Yeah, it's that one that we talked about before. It starts with a C. What's the name of that?
Oh, Comrades.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's them. And I was tempted to do it once. I think they go to the Indiana Dunes, somewhere around there.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. My only thing with that is I know you don't need a ton of stuff, but you still got to buy some stuff. And then I'm just wondering if I would use it again.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Is tents and then I get all obsessed, and so then I start
Oh,
buying
really?
all these other things, and
I'm surrounded by people like that, Danny, and they have $500 worth of bags on
collapsible
their bike.
mugs for your coffee,
Titanium
and
this and
yeah,
yeah, and high end stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, how much did you pay for that little
Yeah.
coffee kit that
Right.
you have there that's
Yeah.
ultra lightweight? It's like
carbon fiber,
$400.
Yeah.
And
like a wedding present.
yeah, so there's people with all of this gear,
Yeah.
and they'll one or two of them will actually ride 15 miles away and make themselves a coffee and then ride back.
Yeah, right.
So it's like their successful trip. But I think a lot of people are a little nervous about maybe doing that on their own for the first time.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
So it's in an effort to kind of help that crowd, and we're trying to secure the services of a very a good friend of ours to lead the trip.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very experienced
Great.
bikepacking guy.
That makes the whole difference if you got someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, someone who's like,
And they have, if they're friendly and can teach people.
yeah,
stuff
good
too,
guy.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do it with someone I don't like, so.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'll let you know about it.
Yeah,
I
would probably do it.
because I think that the ride, I don't know that I can spend the night there because I got to run the shop, but
You got a doggy.
and a dog, and but maybe do the ride down there with them. Maybe you go on the scouting ride. I was thinking about doing just the trail can change a little bit depending on rain, and if sometimes parts of the trail will get washed out.
Yeah.
Because it does run along a river.
Yeah.
So there are detours. So I want to do a kind of a trip, maybe a
Gotcha.
couple weeks before.
Recon.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then ride back, and or get picked up there.
So if you do it there and back, you're looking at 120, 130?
Oh no, it's 160.
160?
Yeah, 160. Yeah, it's about 80 miles there, 80 miles back.
Oh, it's 80. Okay. You were saying once the pavement ends and then it's another.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, the pavement's about 13 miles.
No, I'd love to do that. I try to do, this is really pathetic because I used to do these rides a lot, but now I try to do at least 3 100-mile rides a season.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, which is nothing really, but for me, that's my pathetic state right now. Is just to do that. I'm like, okay,
3 centuries in a season. It's having just started riding. Have recently. Within the last couple of years again.
Yeah.
That's a good goal.
It's
I mean,
it's decent.
If you compare it to where we were at before,
Yeah.
it's kind of disappointing.
It's like, really?
Yeah, but I mean, these days I'm spending 6 hours on a bike. That's. I mean,
It takes me about 3.5, Joe.
Oh wow, you're fast, man.
Just kidding. I've just done these. They're pretty simple. I rode up to Wisconsin state line.
Mm-hmm.
Just like had.
Yeah, you ride north, right?
Got like a Gatorade and turned around, that sort of thing. Typically, yeah, but I want to branch out. I do want to. That's why I'm keen on this trail.
Yeah.
I want to check it out.
Relatively flat.
So if I rode here, that's 20, and that'd be 80, and then maybe I get Sarah to do it on her e-bike. That might be something to aspire to over time. But maybe she could just meet me there.
That's probably.
We could have dinner. And then
there's some there's some nice places down there.
My sister loves Starved Rock. She and her husband go all the time.
Really?
Like multiple times a month. Like they love hiking there. In college, I lived in DeKalb, so that was something we used to do is drive over to Starved Rock.
Okay.
It's beautiful. I haven't been there in ages.
There's a big century that one of the local clubs used to host there. Unfortunately, the club's they're out of commission now. They disbanded.
A forever hiatus.
Yeah.
Long yawn.
Yeah, the Oak Lawn Bike Psychos. You're familiar with them? They were forever. They were the forever. They were the club du jour around here in our neck of the woods for a long time. They're just local cats, and they finally just got to the point where they can't manage anymore. Nobody wanted to run the club. They kind of aged out of it, and but they used to do a really nice century down there.
Nice.
And for 10 years, or until they disbanded.
You did that ride?
We were doing the support for it, neutral support. So I would drive it, and then we would at the end of the ride we would do half of the century. So we'd do like 45-50 mile ride.
Oh, cool.
And then
so you at least get to ride a bit.
Yeah, we do the hilly portion of it, the harder part, and it's beautiful. It's really kind of a nice ride down there, and surprisingly hilly. They managed because you've got the river there, so you've got some parts there that you've got some good hills.
So where does this where you can pick it up right here? Where does it start? Is this the start?
Right across the street.
This is actual start.
Right across the street from the shop. It's the start of the I&M Canal Trail. So that trail across the street used to go all the way down to Bridgeport. It used to go down to from here to Bubbly Creek, like down in that area, like Chinatown here in Chicago, along what before the Stevenson Expressway, before I-55.
Wow, dude, you're going back.
That's where the I&M Canal Trail used to run. But when they put in the highway, it took out the canal trail from here to downtown Chicago. But before, it used to start right in the Chinatown area.
That I knew there was some history like that that extended that far.
Yep.
But that's fascinating. I didn't know that it could take you all the way to Starved Rock.
Yeah, so it starts across the street, and unfortunately, across the street, or the portion here through our town, is probably the
least scenic.
And worst kept.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's a part of the Cook County Forest Preserve, which isn't. They haven't really maintained that trail very well at all.
Sad.
Yeah, it is, because on the other end of the trail, the people at the other end are doing a fantastic job of trying to promote what they have, the I&M Canal Trail. There's a society there. There's a historical society. There's a woman and a group of people there. A lot of, I think that the people on that end have realized what a gem they have and what how important it is to their tourism, or how important it could be to luring more and more people there. So I'm at the other end of that. I am at the feeding end of that. And so hopefully we'll start doing more and more with that, events, and trying to work with them and trying to promote what we have here, because it's really fantastic. You know? And I think we've spoken about it before, but a lot of people that are riding cross country will catch that. A lot of bicycle tourists will catch the path down in that area, and because it basically takes 80 miles of road riding, on open road riding, off their itinerary, and they're able to kind of ride, chill, and even camp along the way. If they're not up for an 80-mile day. And it spits them out right at our front door, basically. So.
Yeah. It gets you pretty close to Chicago.
Yeah, you're 17 miles, and we're about 17 miles from here. So, it gets them pretty close. So,
sweet. I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of stoked now. I want to do that ride. I think I'll ride here and then ride to Starved Rock.
Wow,
that'd be a nice 100.
I almost want to I'll drop what I'm doing and go.
Let's do it. I'll do it
during the week.
Yeah, if you want to, I'll just take a day off work.
You have 100 miles in you right now in your legs?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You'd be able to.
I've been doing a lot of 50s.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of 50s.
Well, a lot. I've been doing more and more. Like, Strava gives you your. They keep adding features, so it gives you the whole percentage.
This is since you got your new bike?
Yeah.
Wow, good for you.
When I ride with Sarah, it's obviously a little more chill. But what's cool about that is she's getting better at the e-bike, because she wants a workout.
Sure.
So she's trying to find that right combo, the right actual gears, and then the power assist meter level thingy. So we've been doing. I think we rode to Calumet Fisheries last week.
On Southside, yeah.
The Blues Brothers Bridge.
Yeah.
That's a nice 20 each way.
Okay.
And so unfortunately it was that sweltering day, Memorial Day.
Oh boy, yeah, it was 90.
It was
in the
90
90s
plus.
Here. Yeah.
And I at the very end I was feeling it, if you know what I mean.
It'll zap you.
And I did everything right. I was hydrated 24 hours out. I was doing nothing but chugging water.
Look at you, Danny.
Had all my sunblock on.
Wow.
And that, I had all the bikes ready, and then we went. So it turned into it wasn't a hard ride because it's flat. And we had What was cool is we had a tailwind back, which, obviously is the ideal way to do it, but you can't always control that.
Sure.
But even then, it was so warm, it felt like kind of like a hair dryer on you the whole day.
Yeah.
But then getting back, we're flying. Like I was doing 28 without trying.
Wow.
For like stretches,
Sure.
That's a fun little ride. And I love Calumet Fisheries.
So you went there, you have a snack
we obviously didn't want to eat
a pound of shrimp.
a bunch of smoked salmon. No, obviously it was very hot, so we weren't like feeling hungry. You know how that goes. But we got a small order of shrimp.
Oh, okay.
And we just nibbled on that, and then we had they do like a nice little coleslaw. I'm a coleslaw
Oh, I love coleslaw.
aficionado.
You are aficionado.
I rank them, yeah.
Wow.
I love a good slaw. We had I had like an RC cola.
That's very Chicago.
I drink I don't even drink like a can of soda a year. So I'm like, I'm just going to have an RC. That's very Chicago.
Yeah,
Royal Crown.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a fun ride. So no, I'm just trying to amp it up. And then, like weekends I've been trying to do at least 150.
Over the weekend.
Yeah, at least one.
Counting Friday?
No, sorry.
Or one, I'm sorry,
just like
150 mile
ride.
Gotcha.
Like around there.
Gotcha.
And I try to
Gee, Danny.
make them a little bit
Make me
harder.
feel bad. And during the week, do you get
Don't
your
feel bad.
You get your ride in during the week? You ride
So
consistently?
I do, but they're very short. I do these 10, 15 mile rides.
Okay.
I basically hit the lakefront. Because at the time I go, it's not that crowded. Obviously, if you go anytime it's crowded, it's just bananas.
So that's morning for you, or
I will go morning because I have a late start and a late finish. So I work 11 to 8 or 11 to 9. So I will go late morning. So it's like a 10, 15 mile. I have like a specific little loop I do.
Gotcha.
So I take the 606. I hop onto that. It's not too far from my house. And then have you ridden on the 606?
I've never ridden that.
It's nice. It's a lot of runners and joggers.
Yeah.
And walk. It's not really, made for like real biking. But if you ride chill, it's just a nice little connector.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
I've seen enough of it. I don't live in that part of the city, and drag my bike.
It's a beautiful thing that they did that because the New York version is called the High Line, and that's really, really cool. So that's I think it's in the West Village. It's in west side of Manhattan, and it's an old train line, and so they've made it kind of artsy.
Yeah,
and you can. I love that. So then when they came up with the 606, I was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, they've talked about doing more of that here in Chicago, but there's actually in some of the neighborhoods a lot of resistance to it because they've seen what happened up on the north end, and when they did that, and I mean, property values went way through the roof, and the gentrification and all that stuff, and so
it's been in the news lately too.
Yeah, and so on the south side, that's the same. They're like, no, we don't want this happening here.
Yeah,
there's certainly other people that would love to have that. So
it's just so nice. Like I said, it's just a little connector. It's like it takes you out of like Chicago traffic for a minute.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea. Yep. It's beautiful, especially if you ride a bike or you like to do something. But I understand that it does change. It'll change the whole neighborhood.
These are complicated things.
Yeah, there's one that goes through Pilsen, and these are kind of historically Hispanic neighborhoods on the south side, and that area is already gentrifying, I guess.
Yeah, and historically, it was Czech, right?
Czech, yeah. So I mean, that's my explanation to that. It's like
changing all the time.
It's Pilsen.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always Mexican there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's I try to explain that to some of my cousins who are hardcore, and about that. I
little history lesson.
Yeah, a little bit. But those. I mean, it would change it would change the city, and the south side. We're from the south side of the city. You just imagine the transformation that would take place if you had some of these kind of greenways and things going through there. the boulevards, like we have kind of a boulevard system in Chicago.
Mhm.
There's actually a boulevard ride here in the city where you ride in some of those boulevards. Unfortunately, it's probably only during that boulevard ride where it's safe enough to ride some of those boulevards, where you wouldn't maybe potentially run into some trouble.
I live on one. Yep.
Yep. And so, but that's kind of an underutilized system.
Yep.
I've been in places like Barcelona where they use those boulevards and they put a trail right down the middle of the boulevard and really some cool, some cool cycling infrastructure.
Dude, Spain is pretty dope with its infrastructure.
They started out really late when it comes to infrastructure and getting hip to bikes.
They caught up pretty fast.
Yeah, once they got into it, they're just they like anything. A lot of our trends will catch on in various places, but they're they bite and they bite hard.
The
and
nicest, even for cars, not just bikes.
Mm-hmm.
The nicest highways, the best highways I've ever driven on were in Spain.
Yeah, there's some nice ones.
I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one I was on, like literally, it seemed like it was finished that week. Like it was just squeaky clean.
Yeah.
Beautiful. These bridges, the engineering, the money that went into those.
Yep.
No, I was when you notice the highway, like there's something, right?
Yeah,
You're kind of like super nice. But then even like I was in Barcelona and I think saw some cool stuff in Madrid too. But yeah, very, very bike friendly and someone like, is intentional, like right. So
yeah, very much.
There's some cool stuff going on there. I was very impressed. I didn't know what to expect because I hadn't really been to Spain.
Yeah, I say the only downside of riding in a place like Madrid, I mean, there is a lot of traffic, and obviously they're
500 million people.
And the hills. I mean, it's not a flat city,
right?
So it's pretty difficult riding a bike.
Yeah.
I mean, I the last time I was there a couple of years ago,
San Francisco-ish.
I wouldn't say it's that bad. I mean, San Francisco's got some really steep stuff.
Oh yeah,
but long kind of slow grade, gentle grades. A lot of that, and there are some places where you can run into some real hills. So their bike share program are electric bikes. A lot of them are electric. Yeah, I mean they are actually like pedal assist bikes.
Yeah.
So I had one of those, and I was happy to have it. I wasn't really in shape at that time.
Cheated, Joe.
Oh man, it was necessary. It was
Pedro Delgado saw you on an e-bike. What would he say? Would he be cool with it?
Those guys are those ex pros are pretty quick to embrace stuff like compact.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when compact came out, and I would see them like interviewing some of these old pros, and they were riding compact, and they would talk about how great it was. They're like, "Look at this! Look, I got these small gears. Look, 50-34. Oh,
Yeah.
back in my day, I wish I had this when I was climbing up the mountains."
Right.
They did talk about that stuff, about how they wish they had that gearing when they were racing.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't want to ride a 23, a 42 23 up the side of a mountain, but they had to, or 26,
I know I plugged this before, but you just reminded me of that GCN documentary, an hour-long doc on Oscar Ferrari. So good. But he kind of talks a little bit about the technology and the bikes. It's just super cool doc. If anyone's interested, go to GCN and watch it.
He's an interesting cat. He's got his son is racing now. So his son is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He's got a young kid, maybe, I don't know if he's 15 years old.
Oh, okay.
But I've seen a couple of videos with with the son kind of getting into it now.
Oh man, he was one of my favorite riders.
Yeah, talk about a fast dude.
Just a fascinating dude. The races he won, and he's got this dope house that he built for himself.
Yeah.
It's like his cycling museum. Oh my god, it's like
he lives
like paradise.
He lives in.
You're a bike nerd. It's like.
Yeah, he lives in.
I can't remember where it was.
It's the Principality. It's not Spain. It's not France. It's
like
the place in between.
Andorra.
Andorra.
Oh, he's in Andorra.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, him and another group. I'm pretty sure he's up there. There's a lot of, and I might be.
There's a lot.
You know what? I think I might be. I know he's not there, but like Purito Rodriguez is in Andorra.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of
there are a lot of pros up there.
There are a lot of pros in Andorra because of tax benefits.
I think Dan
stuff.
Martin lived there for a while. If he's not still there, I know he's retired now.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful place. I mean, like, the riding in that area is like unbelievable. You know, so great place to train, great place to ride, and I think they're mostly there for the tax.
Yeah. It's like Monaco or that, and Monaco is just insane.
Mm-hmm.
But I went through Andorra by train to Barcelona from France once on a trip with my brother, and that was just super gorgeous.
Danny, I want to do that.
Super gorgeous.
I'm like, you know, my wife is in Europe right now. She's in Spain visiting her family, and she FaceTimes me. You know, she did today in the middle of my work.
Did you start jonesing like?
Oh, you know, I rarely am like, oh, I wish I could be there. I'm not that normally that kind of a person. But today I had a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, today, you know, as somebody was complaining about something, some sort of I want it now type situation here at the shop.
Okay.
You know, I said, wow. You know, there's a chair. She showed me an empty chair.
Oh,
you know, and said, oh, this is your chair here as we sit on the beach, watching the sunset on the Mediterranean, and it just made me think that we got to get you know, there's only so many summers left, Danny. So many
Joe, that sounded pretty heavy, man.
So many Junes and Julys for us to go out and hammer out 100 miles in the Pyrenees, you know. And I mean, I think
there was when I was at Business Insider, we had this article that I think went viral, but I want to say it was from like it wasn't Steve Jobs, it might have been Jeff Bezos. Anyway, it was somehow related to them, I think, but it was a graphic and it showed like how many weekends you have left in your life. So you just put your finger along, you find your age, and then and average life expectancy, et cetera, and then it shows you how many weekends you have, and it's like this crazy visual because it really puts it in a clear way.
Yeah,
you're like, that's how many weekends I have left in my life. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah, I better start getting to it, man.
And so that informed how they made a lot of decisions in business, and I thought it was kind of brilliant. Well, you'll get there. Do you think you might get there this year, or probably
this year? This summer, probably very difficult. Although,
but like maybe in the fall, even or
in the fall for sure. In the fall, this winter for sure. You know, and I probably make up for some lost time by getting over there. You know, a little bit more often. Once I happened to click on airfares, and they've gone up to Europe now.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's really. The European airfare is no longer on sale.
Yeah,
it's not as cheap as it was maybe a year ago.
I do know if you wait, after the high season, whatever, if that even is still a thing. I know generally it's more expensive now because of
it's the
fuel prices
it's the height of the season, but it goes down dramatically.
But even with inflation and the price of fuel, and airlines are going through all kinds of hell. Not that I have too much pity for them because they get a lot of money from the government.
Yep.
But just simply like the difference between going to, let's say, Ireland in like August and like September is like, it's like half.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. It could be like 1,200 or 600.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And speaking of Europe, how's your trip? If you didn't listen to a prior the prior show where we did talk about it, Danny is planning a trip to Ireland. He wants to ride from north to south.
South to north.
South to north.
So originally, the romantic in me liked the idea of going top to bottom, north to south. But I was in my research, I found that the general prevailing winds are south to north.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that's going to make a lot more sense.
Gotcha.
So I probably would be, a glutton for punishment and love to do the kind of headwind ride of Ireland. But I think because it would be, in theory, it's like kind of our first bike trip, and Sarah's pretty new at it, kind of. It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So it's Maizenhead is the southern tip of Ireland, and then Mallinhead is the northern tip. So Maizen to and excuse me, and they, talk about all these different ways you can do it. So we're still in like the planning phase.
Okay.
And I was saying early on, it's definitely not 100%, but we're like really hoping it works.
Okay.
And so we're looking at some of the dates, the money, and some of that. But yeah, I think we had a good stride lately. We had a couple good rides. I'm trying to get Sarah up to like 50 miles.
Okay.
And I figure, if she can do that, she can probably do 60.
Yeah.
But I also want to like do it right and like make sure there's a nice build. So
yeah, and you want to get a win. That when you do that, you want that to be, if you have long-term expectations of being able to do maybe more than more than one, then you don't want a bad experience. And so
yeah,
definitely
not.
You don't want that thing.
No,
that could be a marriage. That could be a relationship breaker. Real.
You're going to say marriage breaker.
I was going to say marriage breaker. Yeah.
No. So to answer your question, so we're looking pretty good. We're feeling pretty good. Yeah, and it's nice to have that goal. And if for some reason we decided it's going to be too tricky, like logistically, or because there's a little bit of a logistics challenge, because we're going to end up in one place, and having started from the opposite end of the country, and what are we going to do with the bikes? So we're going to return them, and what's involved with that, and then getting from the airports to the little towns.
Sure.
There's some logistics involved, and I am just we work hard and we like to do fun things, but at the same time, I don't think either of us wants to spend like $1 million, like putting like a trip. Because sometimes, like you said, like the expenses involved, once you really get into it, you realize, oh my God, this is going to cost this much, and this is going to cost this much. And like you can do rides. I've even considered possibly looking at some of these bike touring companies, but none of them just do it the right way.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a chat for another pod, but I actually think I see a lot of opportunity because it seems like a lot of bike touring companies, and maybe there are just some I'm not aware of, but I don't know. It's like a one size fits all.
Oh, yeah.
And I see a lot of opportunity for someone who it's not even rocket science. It's like, why don't you do this? Why don't you offer this? And we can go into all of that. But I wasn't like super impressed with what they were charging for what they were offering.
I think
not a lot of flexibility is a theme there.
That's definitely a conversation for another pod, because I
100%.
I think a lot of those bike tours have traditionally been geared towards a pretty specific group of bike riders.
Yep.
And granted, those have been the people that have been doing bike tours for all this time.
Yep.
So that it has not been us. I've never considered myself someone who would take a bike tour.
Same here.
That was just not my crowd, right?
Right.
We were racing bikes or whatever
It's
it was.
still not really mine. I kept getting these ads fed to me though, and I clicked on one, and I was like,
There are some, as someone who's been doing a little bit of work in that's, just kind of digging around and poking around, there's a lot of really niche stuff happening, like really like micro tour companies and kind of one guy, word of mouth. Well, a little bit more than word of mouth, because they actually have a company.
Okay.
And they're existing because every week they have 5 or 6 guys, or 5 or 6 people.
Yep.
Some small groups, and they just stay busy all the time. And at the end of the season or at the end of the year, they've cobbled enough together to make a living.
That's nice.
And kind of keep going. You know? So that space is changing a lot, but what people want is also changed a lot. So we're talking about those gravel bikes earlier, and so now there are bikes that allow you to go to places you weren't able to ride a bike before.
Yep.
There things exist now that you can ride over the side of a mountain. You don't have to be on the road like a traditional bike tour used to do. Put you on a hybrid bike or some sort of road bike and just ride 30 miles and do that again the next day and the next day and the next day. Now some of these are like multi-surface trips, you're riding a little gravel, a little road, a little this, you're camping, and I think that's probably, that holds some interest to me,
Yeah. And it's obviously a different world to actually execute on all of that. But I definitely had a flood of ideas, and I was like, wow, I see like some opportunity for this. And again, maybe some of these cool companies already exist, and I don't know about them, but I just there wasn't a lot of flexibility in what I was saying. That was the key thing is like you got to go on these dates, and they do this distance, and so I don't know. And that way, it just felt like maybe there's some opportunity there to make it like choose your own adventure kind of thing.
Danny and Sarah's tour company.
Oh yeah. Oh, that would be fun. Well, yeah, we'll talk about it some other time. But I definitely think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that.
Oh, cool. Cool.
So we're on track. We're hopeful it happens. We're gonna do some more planning. We've both been a little busy with work lately. But hopefully that comes up. And if not, we'll do it, we'll do it next year. But we're still thinking it's going to happen.
Nice, Danny. Well, and speaking of planning, I think that's part of what we were doing during our hiatus is doing some
our yawn.
Yeah, talking a little bit about the future of the show and what we're going to be doing here at the show. And there's a lot of cool stuff yet to come. I think that we have a lot of ideas, and I think we're capable of pulling a lot of this stuff off as far as guests go and where we take the show and new voices and different people that we can add to the show. There's a lot out there. I think the big thing is that we kind of button up our side of things before we start bringing people in and, start dragging them around here too. But I think we have a good idea of, Danny, I've come up with a few things. I'm going to run them by you after the show. See what you think.
Oh boy, the suspense. Sorry to leave the readers.
No, that's how you do it in the business, Danny.
They'll find it some other time.
They'll tune in next week, and maybe we'll have a little sample of some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to Danny about after the show. How do you like that?
Great.
How do you like that?
And get in touch if you're listening.
Yes.
If you share it, that's awesome. That's how podcasts get better known. And if you enjoy our banter and our insights.
Yeah, it's mail@bikeshopsociety.com. You can email us. You can reach us at 833-4MY-BIKE. That's 833-4MY-BIKE.
I love that we have a freaking number.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
Is that your personal number, or is that just like an actual number?
That's a number that I got for the shop during COVID. I was going to do like pickup, and I really thought that we were going to be in a lot of trouble when COVID hit, and I was trying to figure out a way to drum up some business, and then I couldn't deal with all the business that we did get, so it kind of fell by the wayside. But I secured this kind of cool number, 833-4MY-BIKE.
I love it,
and now it's become the podcast number.
First time I saw it, I'm like, is that real?
No, it's a real number, 833-4MY-BIKE. So email that.
Yep.
You can find.
I'm on Twitter at Cycling Reporter.
Yes.
If anyone cares for that, I'll be doing a lot. I usually do a lot of tweeting around race
Danny.
time.
Shh, you do too much tweeting.
No, not enough, Joe. More.
You do a lot of tweeting.
See, so what's funny is
I'm gonna focus. You're gonna. You know what? Well, go ahead.
No, what's funny is, I follow some people who make me look like I'm just like in a cave.
Really?
I follow like cycling Twitter.
Yeah.
It's a very hyper high caffeinated. I think it's not your preferred social media. I think you're more of an Instagram guy.
I am. I just like pretty pictures.
Yeah.
And no, and I do.
But during racing, I was going to just say
it's hard.
The Dauphiné just started, but for the Tour de France, I'll be tweeting a lot. So if anyone cares, maybe they already know me, maybe they don't, but you can do that. I'm on Instagram as well. It's a private account, but I'm happy to let anyone
at Cycling
come
Reporter.
along for the ride at Cycling Reporter.
We're also at Bike Shop Society on Instagram and Twitter and all those places too.
You can find us
all over the place. And
thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for waiting for the show. And I think we're back on. We'll be back here regularly again. And lots of cool new things to bring you.
Super dope.
All right. So I guess that is it. See you, Danny.
All right, Joe. Take care.
Hasta.